Hi, dear friends. Welcome to Soul Satsang. My name is Anya Light. I am your host for today. Welcome. If you are having any issues hearing me, let me know in the live chat. Otherwise, I'll assume all the tech is working properly. I'm so glad you all are here today. We're going to get started in just a minute or two. I'm going to give people just another minute or two to settle in and to arrive. In the meantime, I would like to just take a little bit of space here and thank by name my beautiful, wonderful patrons. My patrons help me every month to live a practical life in the world with bills and rent and such, and help me to make free gatherings like this possible. So I just want to thank you guys. So thank you to Ian, thank you to Jan, thank you to Diane, thank you to Tom, thank you to Tanisha, thank you to Michael, thank you to Sue, thank you to Joy, thank you to Jennifer, and thank you to Reggie. You guys are awesome, and I'm really appreciative of you. And who's here? Hello, friends. I wish I could read whatever language that is in. I'm not sure. 327. And hello to 12D Light Language. That would be Amanda. Hello, Amanda. Glad you're here today. All right, guys. So this is a very big day, because this is the first time I am publicly sharing on this topic of ETs. This is the very first time. I mean, I've shared little bits here and there one-on-one with friends, but never in a group setting. So yeah, this is a moment, and I am so glad you're all here for this moment. So let's start with a little bit of intro about how this event came into being and how it emerged and what significance that has to the general conversation as a whole. So when I decided to do this topic, to talk about this topic at our Soul Satsang, I was really fascinated because I had a number of people reach out to me and say, wow, I'm really surprised you're talking about this. And the general consensus of why some people were surprised, and actually why some people didn't even want to come today or weren't even interested in hearing on this topic, was that actually, they were too afraid. They have a deep phobia or fear of ETs. And then the other was just feeling like it's a bit too outlandish or too not the typical of what you would consider to be spiritual. So I realized that with this topic, I do step outside of the more mainstream spiritual conversations. Conversations about ETs are not exactly quite legitimized, even in spiritual circles yet, keyword yet. So, but I want to address the first reason that people were either uninterested or nervous or just not wanting to come today to share in this discussion, is because of fear. So basically, many of you who are tuned in right now, and I'm so glad to see you all rolling in. Hi, Helena. Hi, Sue. Hi, Jan. I'm guessing, and I would be, if I was a betting woman, I would put money on this, that some of you have some fears wrapped up into this conversation, some tension, or maybe someone that you know has a deep fear of ETs, of aliens. I will give you a little story. So one of my more recent partners, when I first broached this subject with him and told him that I was really interested in ETs, he said, "Why?" And I said, "Well, I've been abducted a few times." And that probably wasn't the best way to start the conversation, because he grew extremely tense and fearful, and then just kind of like was like, "I don't even want to talk about this with you. It freaks me out too much." So looking back, I definitely would have not started off the conversation like that. I was trying to be playful and joking, but it didn't turn out that way. And the reason that it does rub people the wrong way so often is because the mainstream media are, typical Hollywood movies, typical films, TV shows, even music, is oftentimes centered around this idea of ETs, of aliens being negative, scary, malicious, harmful, scary, horror show kind of like vibe. And I understand that is that's there for a reason, in the sense of the more mainstream artistic expressions in our world today tend to capitalize on the darkness of things more so than the light of things. So, oftentimes, and this is something I've noticed in people's spiritual journeys, in the very, very, very beginning stages of starting to become curious about spirituality, they actually, one of their first steps, believe it or not, is starting to really love horror movies. And I've said this many times. I know this is a bit controversial, because I know some people continue to love horror movies and some people outgrow them. So wherever you're at, it's fine. But it just seems to me like in the beginning of someone starting to awaken to more metaphysical life, to this idea of life beyond the physical form, life beyond death, more spiritual concepts, they get into horror movies. And that's because it's really the most easily grabbable thing in our mainstream world that's available to people. Yes, there are spiritual movies out there that are really beautiful, that are uplifting and high vibrational and about angels and etc. But really, that's not as heavily promoted in our global society today as is the darkness, to be honest. So our mainstream artistic expressions, films, TV shows, they tend to focus on the negative because that's what our society does right now. And because of that, because there's so much of that out there, people just then automatically associate the topic of ETs with darkness, with evil. So that's a bit of a shame, really. And that's part of why I wanted to talk about this topic with all of you today. And hello to dear Melissa. Thank you, everyone, for starting to share in the dialogue. As I'm talking, I really would like this to be interactive. So go ahead and throw up your questions now if you have any, or comments on this topic, and I can kind of weave in your comments into what I'm saying in the here and now. So people have this deeply ingrained association with ETs mean bad, ETs mean evil, ETs mean abduction, ETs mean torture. And that is just so far from the truth, dear friends. And if this is the first time you've ever dove into a gathering like this on this topic, in terms of how does this relate to spirituality, then I welcome you with an open heart. If you, like, I know some of you here are new to this and you're old hat, I hope that maybe there's something here that I can share that will spark something new for you, or something new that will just be said in a different way to get your brain to kind of think. So any discussion of ETs needs to just start with a discussion of the term starseed. So who here, let's get like a little show of hands virtually, who here is familiar with the term starseed? I definitely know Light Language, 12D Light Languages, because that's what her whole YouTube channel is about. She coaches starseeds. So a starseed is someone, it's a label, and like all labels, it can be useful and can be a distraction. So it just depends on where you're at in that moment. But a starseed is a label that basically helps us to remember why we're here. Now, not everyone is going to identify as a starseed, but if you're here, my guess is that maybe some of you do. A starseed is someone who knows that their primary soul incarnational cycle is oftentimes happening in places other than Earth. So starseeds have a deep, deep remembrance of the fact that they are from elsewhere, that they are, they don't really feel like the Earth, the planet Earth, is their primary home in terms of incarnating. Now, yes, I understand that as we go forward on our spiritual journey, that this concept of home is problematic in itself, because we need to learn that everywhere is home. We need to learn that the whole universe, all of creation, all of existence is home. And simultaneously, we are individualized beings as well. And we also, along with that, have the truth that we're in a body right now. And this body doesn't always look like this human earth body. So oftentimes our bodies look different, and that's where the starseed label comes in. So for myself, so let me say, back up a little bit and say, I have done a lot of different healing work in different Native American spiritual communities. And those leaders in those communities, those medicine men, those medicine women, they are so deeply connected to Mother Earth, because their soul comes back to Earth again and again and again and again on this joyful mission to be here on Earth. That's where their soul is most attuned to. And so they're not starseeds. They are wholly invested in working with Mother Earth, working with the systems and rhythms of Mother Earth. And that's a different kind of expression of the cosmos than someone like myself. Now, I will say I super, super love Earth. And, the last month Soul Satsang that we did, many of you guys were here last month, is I talked about healing techniques working with Gaia, Mother Earth. So I am very much attuned to Earth. And in my Reiki teachings, I often help people connect with Earth as a spirit guide. However, at my deepest core soul level, I am not from here. I am from elsewhere. For myself, I have deep knowings that I am the two places that I have been many, many, many more times than Earth, drawn to more times, would be so these might be two new terms for you as well, but I am a Pleiadian and I am an Arcturian. So the Pleiades, a star system, and then the star Arcturus And these places, how do I know that? Well, some star seeds have full-blown memories of, almost like watching movies in their minds of specific events from other incarnations when they were living on different planets, different stars, different galaxies. For me, at least so far, it's really a lot about the vibrational frequency of these words. So the first time, so I'll back up and I'll give you a little bit of a story of how I got into the starseed path. It was about 2014, and I was doing Reiki sessions with this beautiful woman named Rachel. And we had just concluded a session, and she was packing up her things, about to leave my home. And I'll never forget this. And she just very softly hands me this book. And as you can see, I've literally read this book now so many times, it doesn't even have a cover anymore because the cover fell off because I've been in the bathtub with this about 1 million times. The back is literally falling. Oops. Okay, it literally just fell off now. Now the book has no back or front. Great. Yeah, I like to read in the bathtub. And it's, there's notes and highlights. And anyway, this book is called Bringers of the Dawn, Teachings from the Pleiadians by Barbara Marciniak. And it's one of the best known books on the topic of ETs, on star seeds, that is out there. It's from the 90s. Hey, 327, you love that book? Awesome. Yeah, it's such a good book. It's really very accessible for a newcomer to this topic, and also quite funny. It's a funny book. It's kind of amusing and lighthearted and whimsical, which I love. So I started reading this book. So she just gives me this book and she says, I think you're supposed to read this book. And I took this book and I held it in my hand and I just felt something shifted inside of me. And I couldn't put the book down for 2 days, 3 days straight. I just read the book just completely straight through. And I rarely do that with books. I'm kind of I always have like 20 books going, and I have a bit of attention deficit disorder with books. But this book I couldn't put down. And the book is channeled. So Barbara channels Pleiadians. And I knew as I was reading this book that I somehow knew that that's me, that that's my family, my fam, the Pleiadians. And the Pleiadians are fifth dimensional beings, meaning they're in a higher frequency typically than most of us here on Earth. Most of us here on Earth reside in the third or fourth dimensional vibration. They're generally in the fifth or beyond. And the Pleiadians are very, very, very much in the heart. They're very heart-centered beings. And they have, for the most part, transcended duality. So for the most part, they're living in a state of harmony with each other. There's no war. There's no poverty. There is an abiding remembrance of their identity as divinity. They are more evolved than humans. And the Pleiadians are very interested in planet Earth. And so you could think of it as, the analogy would be, there's many evolved spiritual humans on Earth who love to guide and assist other humans as they're waking up. They're spiritual teachers. Well, the Pleiadians are big-time spiritual teachers, and they have the technology and the intelligence to go beyond where they're from, to travel throughout space, to come to Earth, and to help us. And presently, what they mostly do is they speak through channels, through vocal channels, through written channels, people who bring through messages. And so for myself, I consider myself a channel because when I'm speaking, like right now, I am very consciously aware of who is here and who needs what message. And I don't speak superfluously. I am in an altered state of consciousness right now. I am It is a fun thing being a channel, because you get to become very high, because I'm listening for the messages that want to come through based on who's here right now. So anyway, channels bring through messages from ETs, benevolent ETs. Anyway, so I'm reading this book, Bringers of the Dawn. It's 2014, and I am literally having my mind blown. And I finished reading the book, and I think to myself, I'm going to channel the Pleiadians. Why not? So with just a little bit of guidance from the internet, like literally Googling how to channel, like probably just a few hours of how to kind of research, I just tried it. And it worked. I set up my laptop, and I started recording, because I wanted, I recorded a video, so I wanted to see how I looked when I was channeling. And so I recorded it, and I asked the Pleiadians questions. And the thing I remember most about that first channeling experience was this overwhelming love that came into my heart. And Helena, I know you're here right now. You know that when Helena and I get together and channel, and the thing that is probably, just so striking about channeling is you bring through these higher, wiser beings, and what happens to your heart is your heart opens, and it's like falling in love. It just opens. And I remember running out to my partner at the time and announcing I just channeled the Pleiadians, and he just smiled at me, because he had been there, done that. He'd done that like 20 years ago, and to him it wasn't a big deal. But I was excited. And I got really obsessed with it. And so for the next week or so, I started channeling them all the time. And now here's where the cautionary bit comes in, right? So in the beginning of today's conversation, you know how I mentioned that many people have a phobia of ETs. Well, there is such a thing as not so good, not so nice ETs. Just like humans, there's not so nice humans. And this isn't a judgment. This is just some humans are less awakened to the truth of their divinity. So because of that, they just don't understand that when they hurt someone else, they're actually hurting themselves. So it's not a judgment. It's just talking about evolution. Anyway, so I started channeling like crazy, and it was so great. I felt so enlivened. And then I had an experience where these beings started to come through that felt different. And I didn't ask for them to come through. And I won't even give you the name of them, because it doesn't even really matter. But they come from a desert planet. And to me, what it felt like was like almost like a distorted radio signal, when a signal goes, like instead of just coming through clear with the normal sound, like there's a static or it gets twisted. And that's how the sound was in my head. And I was still pretty curious, like, what's going on? This doesn't feel like the Pleiadians anymore. And I went to bed that night, and I had this dream about this desert planet, and I felt it was a very intense experience of these other beings coming in and just sending me a lot of fear, like trying to mess with my head a bit. And so I thought, oh gosh, what's happening here? And then what I did was I started to get some more guidance from people who have been channeling for a while. And I realized that I needed to do more within myself to, when I set up these channeling sessions, to protect myself, to make crystal clear to the universe, I am only bringing the Pleiadians. And really to learn discernment, because at that point, I think that I had trouble actually believing in the existence of evil or the existence of darkness or negativity. And that might sound strange, but let me just say that we want to believe when we're on the spiritual path that everything is love and light, right? Everything, I started waking up in 2010. And I wanted to believe from that moment on that everything was beautiful and everything was divinity and everyone is beautiful and all beings are beautiful. And that's true. But there's also an element of, reality that some beings are quite malicious. They just are. You could think of there's other beings in the universe, in the galaxy, in the solar system that are just like humans, that are like sociopathic and psychotic, So anyway, these other beings came through and it freaked me out, but I learned from it and I grew wiser and stronger. And now I have zero fear about channeling because I know that I'm connected to all my guides, all my benevolent angels and guides. And basically I put a lot of time and effort into making sure that I know what I'm doing. It was a good experience connecting with those negative ETs because it taught me discernment, which has been very helpful on my path today. And honestly, with what's going on in the world right now, a lot of the issue that we're having, a lot of the problem that we're having is that a lot of people who are very spiritual are not able to recognize yet that there are a group of quite malevolent beings on this planet who are pulling the strings. And we don't like to think like that because it's a downer, man. It's kind of freaky. And then we think, am I just being paranoid? But it's not paranoia. It's just good common sense. So in this book, Bringers of the Dawn, okay, I'm literally losing more pages each time I pick it up. Okay. Do you guys do this? Do you take your books in the bathtub and then they get completely demolished? I'm a water creature. I mean, I take like 4-hour baths sometimes in the wintertime. Like I'm basically a fish. Where was I? I lost my train of thought. What Barbara says in this book, which I think is really spot on and quite hilariously put. She talks about the white t-shirts and the dark t-shirts. And what she says is that in this universe, there are beings who are, beings of intentional goodness and love, people who intended to come here to help others. So this is the Starseed mission. And again, not everyone identifies this way. This is how I identify the most strongly. I mean, I have other labels that I also use to, label myself if I need to in conversation. This is the one that I think, at least for now, resonates the most. The Starseed mission is in knowing that we came here to do good, to do service, to help humanity recognize their cosmic roots. And that's the white t-shirts. Well, there's many kinds of white t-shirts, but these are the healers. These are the caregivers of the world, the helpers, the teachers, the selfless beings, the selfless souls, the Christs, the Buddhas that are the white t-shirts. They come in and they're fully aware of their divinity. They're fully aware of their oneness, and they use their life as a sacrifice. That's not quite the right word. Sorry. As a symbol, as an act of giving, an act of generosity to others. And then, as Barbara says, we have the dark t-shirts. And she makes it like funny, like a joke, like almost like a comic book. And I like that because let's not get too tied to these words and labels. The dark t-shirts are basically those beings who go out of their way to be evil. I mean, what else can you say about it? They're aware of what they're doing. They participate in black magic. They participate in Satanistic rituals. They go out of their way to manipulate and control. I mean, most of us on this planet, most beings on this planet right now, when they do ill towards someone else, it's just out of fear or ignorance. But there are beings who are aware of what they're doing, and they're doing it on purpose. So she says these are the dark t-shirts, the white t-shirts, the dark t-shirts. And essentially this book was the first time I was introduced to the concept that the dark t-shirts have actually been ruling this planet for the past couple thousand years. And that we're in a bit of a cosmic battle at the moment to uplift the human frequency. So that's a whole other topic that I won't get into. Maybe for another time, if you guys like this topic, I'll talk more about ETs at a certain future point. But just for now, just to say that I really love the Pleiadians. This is who I identify with. But there is so many ET beings out there. And my advice to you is, as you start or continue to contemplate this, if you hear the name of a planet or a race and it just clicks, like you're like, oh, to follow that instinct, to follow that, to see what is this about. Amanda says, do you hold the belief that the Jesus Buddha figures could be considered ETs? Yeah, in a sense, they could be considered ETs in the sense of they have transcended the reincarnational cycle, and they consciously chose to come here. And so therefore they are dwelling in a state of wisdom that is aware of the cosmic nature of life itself. Most humans think that Earth is it. And in fact, most humans think that this one lifetime is it. So, and maybe some humans think that there is a heaven and a hell, but that's only then three things. We have life, heaven, or hell. That's three things. The Jesuses, the Buddhas, the awakened enlightened ones, they are aware of the game, if you will, because it is a game, on the grandest perspectives. So they take their guidance from higher evolved beings who may or may not have their primary residence on planet Earth. They could be taking, everyone has a guru, is the kind of lovely thing about the universe. Every teacher has a teacher, right? So where did Jesus, where did the Buddha take guidance from? They must have learned from somewhere, some different beings. And my guess, my hunch, as I'm feeling into this question, Amanda, and this is just, coming through me right now, is that they were no doubt involved in their lifetime with other beings from other places besides Earth who came in and probably spoke through others or simply came to them in dreams and guided them. So in that sense, then they themselves were connected to, or probably identified as beyond simply human. And so in a sense, Amanda, for myself and maybe even you, and I'd love to hear, your thoughts on this, I don't really think of myself as just human. I do acknowledge my humanity. And actually, one thing for starseeds is that it's actually the most difficult for them to get in touch with their humanity. They're very, very comfortable with the higher dimensions. They're very comfortable with meditation, with feeling different frequencies, with music, with sound, with visions, with lucid dreaming, with astral projection, these things. But what's actually really hard for starseeds is the coming into the body, the physical human body. I digress. I do think of myself as a human, of course, because that is partially what I am. But I think that along with the, the Buddhas and the Jesuses type figures, I see things from a much grander perspective. And so I identify as Pleiadian, I identify as Arcturian. Arcturians are even more evolved than the Pleiadians, mostly. I mean, this is just in general we're speaking here. The Arcturians are very, very intelligent. They're very focused on sacred geometry. So the mathematics of the universe, how things fit together, codes and symbols. Because they're more evolved than even the Pleiadians, they can seem a bit more remote to humans when we try to channel, talk to them, access them. We could even say they seem a bit cold in comparison to the Pleiadians. The Pleiadians are like this gushing heart energy, smushy, like cacao, yummy sensuality, where the Arcturians are more like that. And also my analytical mind, my teaching, the way that I teach, the way that I long to use language to explain comes from my Arcturian roots. Very much so. Very much so. My extreme analytical nature, I can credit to my Arcturian roots for sure. So I've taken, so many different incarnations. Who's to say how many? I don't know the specifics. Maybe one day I'll figure that out. Who knows? Not really worried about the specifics though. So, if this is a new conversation for you to think of yourself, maybe I'm more than human. Maybe I've incarnated in other forms, not just human, not just 2 arms and 2 legs, but maybe I was a lion being or a mantis being or from Orion or Andromeda, or I was even a gray, or et cetera, et cetera. There's so many. And when researching or looking into or talking to others about this, or just receiving messages from the universe, my guidance would be, don't get overwhelmed, because it can be a really overwhelming, like wanting to know everything about all the different kinds of beings, and almost like memorizing facts and information and trying to figure it all out. And rather than that approach, I would just invite you to let it come little by little, in little bits. In fact, right now, here and now, let's take a moment and see if anything wants to come through to you on this topic. So let's just take like a breather here. Just take a few breaths and see if a knowing comes in any relation, in any aspect of what we're talking about here. It could be the words, I'm not from Earth. It could be, I'm from Orion. It could be, I'm going to have a dream about this tonight. So again, let's just take a minute, take a few breaths, and listen to any messages that come through for you now. I would love to hear if anyone here identifies as a starseed. I'm going to briefly check my notes here and make sure that I've said everything I wanted to share before I get into the Q&A bit. Yeah. 2 more things. When we talk about ETs, it's really, if you think about it, an ET is no different than you or me. It is simply another way that the universe expresses itself in infinite form. The universe has expressed itself as this mouse. The universe has expressed itself as this bell, as this fingernail, as everything you can see around you. So the fact that there's beings walking around who are 10 feet tall that are blue, or beings that are not fully even physical, you can stick your hand right through them. These different expressions are simply the universe playing and saying, what can I create now? I mean, have you ever seen a sloth? Like, what was the universe doing that day when I was like, I wanted to make a sloth? Like, what is that? You know? What's a hedgehog? What's algae? What's a human? Like, what is this? What is this? Why do I have 2 eyes and not 3? You know? Why do I have a nose here and not over here? It's the universe expressing itself. And then again, going back to the conversation about ETs getting a bad rap, you know, there's many more. This is my feeling on this, and I would love to hear your thoughts. You know, my feeling is there's many more benevolent, loving, wise ETs than there are bad ones, than there are lower dimensional beings. And for this reason, I like to use the term ET most of the time rather than the term alien, because inherent in the word alien is a bit of a negative association. Alien means foreign, or it's kind of a disparaging word in a way. Like, oh, they're alien. They're different. They're weird. They're not like us. It's a kind of a marker of separation. So I just like to say ETs, extraterrestrial, from elsewhere. Okay, so I'm going to take a few pre-submitted questions. You guys were awesome and sent me your questions in advance. And while I'm answering these 3 questions, if anyone here wants to throw up a question into the live chat, I would love to get your question or just a comment about whatever I've said so far. Okay, so Jan says, how do you differentiate contact from ETs versus your guides and angels? Jan, what I would say is that first, to just recognize that on one level, it doesn't really matter, because an ET can be a guide can be an ET. An ET could be an angel could be an ET. It just depends on how you're using the term ET. So I would actually think of an angel as a form of an ET. An ET, an angel, is not really from Earth per se. Its main abode is not Earth. When you think of an angel, when I think of an angel, I think of a being who's going around to the entire universe to offer love and support and healing and help. So I don't think of angels as being necessarily restricted to the earth plane. So in that sense, you could think of an angel as an ET. Angels are very specific categories of beings who were created simply to be of service. And the way I see angels, and again, everyone has a different opinion on this, but I don't see them as beings who began in a lower state of consciousness and then rose up to the state of angel. I believe when they were created, they were already at a very high level of consciousness. There could be some exceptions to that. I know some people say that Archangel Metatron started as a human, for example, and then became an angel. So perhaps there's exceptions to this rule. But in general, I feel that angels have not had to do so much evolution per se. They started out as extremely advanced, higher consciousness beings, and that's pretty much where they stay. So to answer your question, I mean, how do you differentiate? I would say ask the beings that you're working with. So if you're sensing beings around you, so Jan, I know that you do Reiki, for example. So, with Reiki, we call in our spirit guides, our helpers. We don't do that work alone, right? By any means. Like we need help from our non-physical friends. So when you call in your non-physical helpers, you could just ask, are the beings that I'm calling in now, are they ETs? And if so, do they have names? Would they please reveal themselves to me, whether through sight, sound, feeling, knowing? Ask them to reveal themselves to you in a new way, Jan. So in a more specific way, perhaps, and see what comes up. See what you hear when you ask that question. Also, too, when you're working with spirit guides, you can call in specific groups of beings just because that feels good. So sometimes, for example, in a Reiki session, I will call in all the Reiki masters from the past, present, and future, the ones who still live, the ones who have departed this earth plane and the ones who are still hanging out on this earth plane. It doesn't matter where they are, but I will just say, I am inviting in all the Reiki masters through time and space to please help with this session. And I will feel them come. At other times, I've called in different groups of beings. So, but if you feel, Jan, like you're asking just like more generally, for example, like benevolent spirits of light and love, please join me. Once they've come in, once you feel their presence, then you can ask, who's here? Because it's kind of like a lottery. It's like, oh, now may I inquire as to who heard the call? So, and then hear, what they say. I have a question from Helena, and she says, I'm intrigued by abductions. Is that the soul leaving the body or a physical experience? Okay, so on the topic of abductions, part of the reason why people are freaked out about this topic and they don't even want to touch it is that many of us have been abducted as children, and then that memory was wiped clean. I know that's like kind of freaky. If just the idea of an abduction gives you the willies, makes you kind of feel sick, it could very well be that it's not just coming from the fact that you've seen movies about it, but the fact that it has happened to you. Many of us have. I've heard some accounts saying up to more than 50% of the US population has been abducted at some point. And that resonates with me. I would say it's probably something in that range. Now, there's different levels of abduction. There's different intentions for abduction. Inherent in the word abduction, it's sort of a not so good thing because it's like you didn't choose willingly to come along. So, so basically in the word abduction itself, we have a bit of a problem, right? But I want to share with you a couple different scenarios that I had. So I'll share a recent one. No, actually, I'll start with the oldest one. So maybe about 2 or 3 years ago, I had a scenario where I was unable to move, and I don't know if my physical body was taken or if it was just that my spirit was traveling in these other places, or what was exactly happening. But I know that I was partially awake laying in bed and I was unable to move. And I was being taken through this corridor of wherever I was at. It was at a place where it wasn't on a ship, but I was Well, it could have been, but I don't think so. I was in this vast open space, but there were all these beings that were around, and I could feel their presence, and they were watching me. And it wasn't painful, but it was unpleasant in the sense of I didn't want to be there and I wanted to leave. So I was trying to move, and I kept trying and trying, and it was almost like walking through quicksand. And I wanted to depart from the situation, but I wasn't able to. And so I started thinking, like, you guys, you got to let me go. Like, I need to go. Like, I'm over this. Like, just let me go. Eventually, then I came back into my bed, and the whole situation was rather disturbing. So fast forward a couple years, and I was camping, and I was on this beloved, like, little, like, sacred island. And I basically like woke up, and I saw all this green light around me, and my body started being pulled up, and I knew what was happening. And instantly I thought, no, I'm not going. And so I started saying no really loud, like in my mind. I'm not sure if I was actually physically saying the word, but I kept saying no, 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 no. And then I was actively connecting with Gaia, and I was pulling myself down, 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 down. And so eventually they just left. And as I like pondered what had just happened, I realized that in the past few years, I had gained enough self-confidence in myself, enough spiritual energy to be able to know that I could do that. I could say no. I mean, the whole scenario probably lasted no more than a minute, I would say. It wasn't like it was drawn out. I mean, it was a very quick, they wanted to come in and take me, and I just said no. And so, hey, Mel, it's okay, because it's actually better not to respond. Just like ignore this person. It's kind of like a waste of energy. So just send love and light, and then let it go. So it was a really like eye-opening situation for myself, because I realized that I had the power within me to say no, and to be in my own power. So Helena, to get back to your question, I would say that, is an abduction the soul leaving the body, or a physical experience? I would say it just depends on the situation. It could be both, or one or the other. For me, it seems like it's been a combination of both in different scenarios. But one of the things that like feeds the ability to get abducted is fear of being abducted. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword. Like, the more you're afraid of it, the more that it could happen to you. So like, I always want to work with people on basically overcoming their fears of being abducted, because truthfully, like, this is what I want to say. Okay. So you have complete divine sovereignty. And when you're working, or when you have, some kind of brush with another kind of being who is malevolent, who is into manipulation, control, force, negativity, that power is far less powerful than you, my friend, than you, Helena, or anyone else watching this, because the power of light and love is infinitely more strong than the power of darkness. The power of darkness is like kind of a sad little joke, because it tries to like poke you and scare you and boo, right? And ultimately, when you realize that we're all one, and that we all spring from the same source, then there's really nothing to be afraid of, because everyone is you. And so you then would offer love to everyone. including those like lower vibrational beings who are trying to manipulate and control you. So yeah. So I hope that helps, Helena. I love you. And then final question here. And if anyone else has any questions, go ahead and type them in the chat box, because we're almost done with our broadcast today. So, okay, so Carol had a really good question. Excuse me. So Carol said, how do we know who is an alien in disguise and who is a human being? And I love this question because so I hope you don't mind, Carol, but I'm just going to share that Carol and I have spoken on a few occasions about how there's people walking around in the world who, look pretty human, but we know that they're not. And I just want to share like a little story with you guys to this end. So this was about, maybe a month ago, maybe 2 months ago. Probably 2 months ago. I was taking a little walk by the river by my house, and I was kind of in a funky mood. I was just feeling some fears coming up about something, and I was kind of like lost in thoughts. And I was walking along, and I was getting really deep into like these fearful thoughts. And this car like pulled over to the side of the road to where I'm walking, and I was kind of walking in this parking lot. And this car like pulls up right next to me, and this guy is like, come here. So I'm like, okay. So I walk over, and he rolls his window down, and he has like these 3 beautiful dogs, and they're all just like yipping, and they're so cute. And there's this older gentleman, and he says, hey, and he says, how many seconds are in a year? And I said, oh, I don't know. I'm not so good at math. Why don't you tell me? And he said, 12. January 2nd, February 2nd, March 2nd, April 2nd. And I was like, ah! And I just started cracking up. And he's like, have a great day. And then he just drove away. And I was just like, oh, because he showed up right precisely at the moment when I was really getting bogged down in these like fears. And so I thought to myself, as soon as he drove away, was that a human? I wasn't sure. And honestly, it didn't matter. But I really felt like he was some kind of being whose mission it is to just drive around, or maybe he walks around sometimes and he just pulls people out of little like mini potholes, like emotional potholes. He just yanks you up with like a weird joke and a random, hello. And so was he an ET, Carol? Maybe. Was he an angel? Maybe. I think that one of the most exciting things about topics like this, ETs, angels, spirit guides, what have you, is that it takes us beyond strict boundaries of what we think reality is and how we think that life works. We have these strict ideas. I am a human. My name is Anya. I'm probably going to live 80 to 100 years. I'm a female. I have these ideas, right? And then your name is this, and you're a male or a female, and you're a human, and you live here, and this is your occupation, and da-da-da. We have all these like strict boxes. When we get into this kind of stuff, more often than not, the answer is, I don't know. Maybe. Let's find out. So Carol, when you say, how do we know if it's an alien, like a human in disguise? If you're worried or concerned that, who you're interacting with is perhaps one of the like not so nice dark t-shirts, it's like dealing with any other human. It's like keep your distance or send love, hold boundaries. determine how close you want to get, how close you want to interact with that person, and then go from there, But again, going back, and this is the point that I'll end on here with you guys, is that, again, like this whole like overblown notion that like aliens are bad, and this is humanity's initiation phase. We're going through the Great Awakening, my friends. The most astounding awakening period that this planet has ever known. Let's let that sink in just for a sec here. And so, because of that, let's allow ourselves to stretch to the I don't know, to the maybe. When I do channeling and I channel, for example, Archangel Michael, and people will say, well, how do you know it's really Archangel Michael? And I'll say, it just feels right. So that's what I'll leave you with today, which is it just feels right to do this or do that. And if something in your life feels right, trust it. Believe in yourself. Believe in the benevolence of the world and of life itself. And even those dark t-shirts, even this person who's literally just blown up our live chat full of meanness and negativity, even this being is like a beautiful expression of divinity trying to like trigger me and to see if I'll be upset. Like, how beautiful is that? So every person in your life is there destined by the universe to help you wake up, to give you that next test on your journey to see, can I rise into love? Can I rise into courage? Can I rise into the next most beautiful, more beautiful version of myself? And I know that is absolutely, absolutely how the universe works. So thank you to everyone for tuning in today. I've loved being here with you talking about this. It seems like a really perfect time to talk about this topic. So I want to, before I depart, just tell you the date so you can jot it in your calendar for the next time that we're meeting. So our next Soul Satsang is going to be Saturday, May 29th at 2 p.m. Eastern. And the topic is facing our fear of death, a very important topic in these times, in these awakening times. So again, May 29th, 2 p.m. Eastern. If you would like to donate, if that feels like it's right for you, you can click on the link below in the description box, and it'll take you to my PayPal. I always appreciate donations from anyone who genuinely feels like that would help serve their journey to help serve my journey. And otherwise, I'm just like filled with so much love. Thank you, Jan, for being here. I love you so much. Thank you to everyone else who is here. Thanks, Amanda. I love you so much. All right. Blessings to all, and have a gorgeous rest of your day. And we'll talk very soon. All right. All right. Bye, everyone.